Good morning, everybody. This is Kyle Speed 1 coming to you from the workbench. Yeah. Well, today I have a video on making gun holsters. I am not actually going to build one right now because, frankly, I'm out of leather. I don't have enough to even start another project. But as you can see here, here's some of the shaping tools for the leather when you want to smooth the edges of the holster. Okay, when the leather is wet, that's a shaping tool. This here is a engraving tool. See, that's got that little bit, if it'll focus. It's got a little bit, and you set the depth, or actually it's the width from the edge of the leather in order to do something like run your stitching seam down through. Okay? That's for that. This is a awl, or a stitch groover that, again, with the leather wet, you make your line, your stitching line groove down through the leather, not through it, but a little over 1/16 of an inch down, depending on the thickness of your leather. Okay, this is the primary leather that I use for making the holster itself. This really thin piece here, that's what I use to line the interior of the holster, so I don't have that rough leather rubbing up against the pistol. Okay, because that will ruin your finish. It's a proven fact. So the people who know that if you don't put a liner in there, you'll mess up the finish of your pistol with it rubbing on the rough part of the leather. Okay, so that's the leather. I still got more stuff in here. What is that? Oh, those are needles for the thread. Okay, that's if I can. A lot of this stuff, if not most of it, was bought at Tandy Leather here in North Texas. Okay, so you have, depending on spacing, if I can dig this out of here, depending on the spacing, okay, see how those are diamond shaped like a pitchfork? That's what you use when the leather is still wet to put your stitching holes in through the leather, and you just work your way down until you get to a stopping point. Okay, and that punches, you want to go through the leather on both pieces of the leather. This is one piece of leather that's curled around on itself to meet up with the other edge that's first glued together. All right, then you punch your holes for the twine or the sewing thread. I had a brain fart there. Now this is set for setting buttons or dots or other stuff into the leather. Okay, and here's some white thread, and it's I don't know if you can see it real good, but it's fairly, I don't know what gauge that is. I don't remember. But it's sturdy stuff. And it's wax coated, which has two helping things about it. One, it's waxed, and it'll make it easier to run your needle. Let's see. To run your needle through the leather of the holes that you punched, in and out, in and out, in and out. That's what you're doing. And it'll build your hands up real well. And since it's waxed already, comes pre-waxed, or you can do it yourself. The second benefit is it waterproofs it against getting wet. Of course, the wax repels water, right? All right, there's you some black, and this is really heavy gauge stuff here. And I've used it on some of my holsters. Okay, here's an example of a stamp that you can stamp into the leather. I had a buddy of mine. He's Jewish, and his dad was a cop back in the 1930s, I think it was. And he had lost the belt and the holster to somewhere, and only had the gun remaining. And I told him if he wanted to, I'll make you a holster to fit that particular. It was a Smith & Wesson police model. Let's see. There's an example of some needles with twine already, or the thread already around it. As you can see, they're pretty stout. They might bend a little, but I've never had one break. Now this right here, some of you might recognize it, but it is literally used to aid when I'm gluing the two pieces of leather together to hold it in place in several areas. I've got more of these to keep the leather locked in place until the glue sets. It's kind of like contact cement for the leather. Okay, and that aids with holding the two pieces together so they're not moving around, especially when you go to start driving your holes in order to start using your needle and thread. Okay, so there's that. It's kind of blocked off right now. I need to punch that leather out of there. But this is made for slotting the leather, so you can put something, you can thread something through the hole. Okay. And I've got more tools, but I'm not going to drag them all out of here. Here's another punch for the making the holes to sew the leather together, but it's a 2-pronger. The other one was a 4-pronger. When you get to certain points and you run out of room or something and you don't want to go any further with the 4, then you can use something like this 2, or they even have a single punch. So you can put the last stitch exactly where you want it. Let's see. I think that's it for the tool. All right. So bear with me here. I'm doing this one-handed. And trust me, when I'm doing these leather holsters, I'm using both hands, and usually my hands are thoroughly wore out by the time I get done. Now, this color of dye, now this is USMC black, United States Marine Corps black. That's not this color. This is that chocolate brown. Some want to call it russet, but I tend to call the reddish brown dye russet. I don't remember exactly what this one was. Now, to seal in the dye and protect the leather after you're done, and I always take a rag before I add this. Always take a rag and more or less buff shine the leather, okay? And get any dust, dirt, excess dye or anything like that off of there first before I apply this. And it's rosaline. And as you can read, it protective acrylic finish for leather, okay? And it works. It is waterproof. I made these holsters, about 3 or 4 years ago, okay? And they look just as good as they did the day I finished it, okay? And now this one here is called a double Mexican loop, okay? And here I've got those Native American stamps that have a particular meaning in their language. And you see some grooving that I did. You know, this one's got a double groove. Okay, and I used the white thread, waxed thread. This one here is also a Mexican double loop. And I used some of the same, if it'll focus, I used some of the same Native American motif symbolisms. See, and like this is the phoenix, or they call it the thunderbird. And if I remember correctly, this one right here was supposed to represent the sun coming up. Like I said, it's been a while. And of course, I did more grooving in these. Got a little artsy-fartsy with it. But it was my intent to create a basic. Now, some people would call this a pretty fancy rig. It doesn't have any bling on it, but with the time and effort of making the engravings and doing the stampings and doing the double stitch, they call it the saddle stitch on everything, plus the liners, plus the belt, that took me a while to finish. And to me, it doesn't have any bling on it, but to me, there's still a fancy holster and belt setup. A lot of people back during those times, they couldn't even begin to afford even one single holster built like this. They'd have to save up 15, 20 years to buy a holster this fancy back then. Okay? Nowadays, shoot, I could probably charge $325 for each holster and charge $200 just for the belt. Okay? But it's built to fit me, and I've gotten fatter, but that's why I added an extra hole. And I've got a hole punch, a leather punch, that I can punch more holes in if need be, if I get way out of whack on my waistline. And if you've noticed, you see how this is humped, and it comes down, it follows the barrel all the way to out of the holster. Okay, well, this is a 6-inch barrel on this particular, and if I'm not mistaken, that's got a black trigger guard and a black back strap. and it shoots a 44 cal. I'm wanting to say that's an 1861, but I'd have to go back and look. I've got a lot of these from Pieta, Italy, and Uberti, Italy. Now, I actually prefer the Pieta pistols. And I'm going to try to take this out. It fits literally like a glove, because what I did was, before I did any tanning of the leather or any dyeing of the leather and putting that rosaline on there, or resaline on there, I took, after sewing it, okay, and stamping it, I took the holster, each holster, and I put it in a bucket of warm water, and I let it sit, I forget how long, maybe 5-10 minutes, so the leather would get soaked, because you want it to be wet so it can become pliable and be able to shape and form how you want to without cracking the leather, whether you're collapsing it or expanding it, okay? And the first time you do a holster and you try to do a wet form, you'll find out real quick, sister, if you didn't leave that leather in that tub of water long enough, because that's exactly what you'll do when you take saran wrap or a Ziploc baggie. As big as these are, I was using turkey. I think I was using turkey Ziploc baggies to put the pistol in, and I would just wrap the excess around the pistol down to the hand grip, and then I would put the pistol into the holster while it's wet, okay, all the way down where it needs to go. Then as it's drying, I would come back and forth and start forcing the leather to conform to the shape of the cylinders, the back, the barrel, the loader arm, okay, or they call it the rammer, and even the trigger guard, okay, and the side of the receiver, okay. And so you do that while this is still wet, but you'll want to wrap your gun to protect the finish and to prevent rust, because there's water on this and it's wet, and you don't want your pistol to rust up on you. So you do something like I did with a turkey bag or a large chicken cooking bag, you know, like a Ziploc baggie, or you take saran wrap, and I've done that too, where you just wrap the pistol real good with that saran wrap, the clear saran wrap, and you gently install it into the leather, putting it precisely where you want it. Some like the pistol to ride a little high. Some people like it to ride a little lower inside. It's up to your personal preference. But because you can see this taper of the holster, you're only going to be able to bury that pistol so far because of the taper. It's going to limit you on how far that pistol can be shoved down into that holster. Okay? Now, one of the other things is this is called a holster guard or sheath. And this being a double loop, quite literally, there's the back of it. What you're doing, now this is attached. It's all one piece. Excuse me. As you can see, it's looped around that belt, and it comes back down, and then you have your two holes for stuffing the holster through. Okay? And you've got to do that while it's wet. As a matter of fact, I remember doing all these cutouts and what have you, and engraving and stamping and everything at certain stages, to where when it came time to put the holster and the holster guard or sheath, it's there to prevent rubbing on you, so to speak, and to help protect and hold the pistol holster in place. Because as you can see here, this holster goes through this loop and it goes through this loop, and the whole thing has to be wet with water when you soak it, and bring it out and dab it off with a towel. And you better start getting busy with it, because the last thing you want is for that leather to dry out on you as you're trying to shove this, because you'll bend it over, okay, and you'll stick it through the first slot. Then you got to work it through the second slot, and you got to do the same process with the last two slots, okay? And as you can see, this more or less mimics this open area, and that's how you're stuffing it down through there. And once this dries with the pistol in it, wrapped up with whatever, and you wet form it, okay, and you shoved everything through these holes, then you let it dry. You check on it every now and again, make sure that nothing's moved on you, or you got this clocked how you want it into this, and let it dry. And I think I built most of these during the summer months of the year in North Texas, which, if any of you know, it gets hotter than Hades in the summer in Texas. So you let it dry out for days, if not a week or 2 weeks. Don't be in a hurry over it. Well, then after that, you can come back with your dye and soak the leather with the dye, and let however many applications that you think it's going to take. The more applications, the darker the leather is going to get, okay? And now it can get so far that it becomes saturated and you can't get any more in there, okay? And that's the cutting off point. You know, you really technically don't want it to go all the way through the leather out to the other side, because you're going to have bleed. And that's not a good thing either. That also means you've got to take your dauber or a rag and get way down there through that holster from both ends and saturate it with the dye. All right. Okay, it's not cooperating here. So, I turned the light on somehow. That helps. But you can see the tones that I put in. And what I did was I took some of this black and I took some of that russet, and I did the russet first, since the black is stronger and it'll overwhelm the russet. That's that reddish brown color. That I took the dauber and I went around the edges, kind of like a smoky burned technique to it. Okay. Sometimes the light catches it real good. Did the same thing on the belt. And like I said, all of this stuff came from Tandy Leather in North Texas. The belt buckle, the leather, the tools, the stamps, the needles, the thread, the dyes, and the resin, and all that came from Tandy Leather. Okay, and you can order all of this stuff online from Tandy Leather. I'm kind of glad that was an accident that turned on my my light for the phone, because now you can really see the tones of that dye on the leather. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of myself. That turned out great. You can see in there where I've already got wear and tear from pulling the pistol in and out. Now here's what they call a hammer thong. Okay, and I left it basically the natural leather, and then I bent the piece over and I sewed it together, glued it and sewed it together. Then I came back with that punch and punched a slot through it, and this hole is what, oops, I'm knocking stuff off the table, is what fits this hammer spur, okay? And it keeps the pistol from flopping around in or out of the holster onto the ground or grass or the water or whatever's going on. It keeps the pistol in place, okay? That's basically what it's there for. Double Mexican loop, and it was really popular during that time period that the design was thought of. It was really popular in places like Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and even California. Okay, it became a pretty popular piece. If you watch the old westerns, you may see somebody walking around with this type of holster. All right, now I'm going to throw that on the ground. I'm going to move these out of the way, and I'm going to show you. I forgot to put those tools away. I'm going to show you some patterns. Now this is one, and I made these straight up out of typing paper or computer printing paper, okay? And you know, you got to have your center line for the holster when you make the bend. Now it won't be that sharp, but that's where your center line, that's your aiming point for that holster when you go to curl that leather together and glue the two areas together, there and there, glue them together, then come back with your hole punch and punch your holes. You make your sewing seam groove first, then you come back and punch the thread holes in so you can move your needle in and out of the leather as you need to. All right, now this one in particular happens to be the one I did for one of my 1911s, 45 ACP, and it's all black, and it's designed to punch a hole through, yeah, it's this side because I'm right-handed, through this side and attach it to a shoulder harness. Okay, that's what this is designed for, because I would be reaching under my left arm, my armpit area, to draw that 1911 out. Okay, so there's one pattern. All right, this is a right hand holster for that buddy of mine. That was his father or grandfather's police Smith & Wesson. It had a 6-inch barrel. And this is the pattern that I made for his gun, the holster. Okay. Again, you got your center line. You got your center line that you want to aim for when you fold the leather over. And you also have, in this instance, a belt strap. Okay. All this is one, excuse me. All this is one piece of paper. Okay. And you cut it out of you cut the leather out with this shape. And then you can go to town and you start building your holster. Okay. And this is the belt strap that you thread the belt through to place it on the belt. Okay, and this area here is what I'm showing where the sewing needle thread needs to go. So what I did was I roughed up the leather here, roughed it up under here, laid it over on top of the leather, and glued it with the contact cement for leather, punched the holes, and threaded it, sewed it together. Okay, so that's that. Here's one of the pieces to my shoulder harness. Here's another piece for my shoulder harness, with a description on what was what and where it's supposed to go and the whole 9 yards. Okay? So that goes there. This is the piece that's the two straps that are attached here and here. Whoops. Here and here. Where's my finger? There it is. Here. That you thread the straps through this to form an X that goes across your back. This will be between your shoulder blades. Okay. If you look at the old school gunfighter style shoulder harnesses, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. Now this one's for an 1851. In particular, it was for my Richard Mason's conversion to be placed on a shoulder harness. Okay. And that's exactly what I did. Is I made one shoulder harness, and I made numerous shoulder harness holsters, where when I got it finished and built, I would mark the area that I would punch a hole in the leather, and take a Chicago screw and put it through that piece of the leather into the shoulder harness, and then screw the backing on. That way I can trade out any holster I want to the singular shoulder holster. Okay. That's better than making 15 or 20 shoulder harnesses to go with a holster. I can just build one and put anything I want to on it. Okay, in 1911, an 1851, in this case a CZ83. That's my holster pattern for a CZ83. Okay, same thing. Put a hole in it, Chicago screw, mount it onto the shoulder harness. All right. And here is the example, if you will, of the Mexican double loop holster setup And as you can see, that says left hand. And there's your hole openings in order to shove the holster through. Okay? All one piece of leather. There's nothing sewed together except for this side. And that's the only side that needs to be sewn. See? That's the only side that needs to be sewn. You don't have to sew that part either, because what? You threaded it through the holes. Alright? So that's a Mexican double loop. Here's one loop. There's two loop. Alright? And I don't remember what. Oh, yeah, that's for the Texas jock strap. I don't think I've shown you the Texas jock strap holster yet. I'll get around to it. Here you have a plain Jane holster set up. Again, it's got this piece that protects the holster and your breeches from wear and tear. Again, your center line aiming point for when you fold or you curl the leather onto itself to try to line up everything perfectly. And that's what you're aiming for. I mean, you can mess around a little bit, but you're going to have to trim some leather. And a lot of guys, as well as myself, don't like wasting the leather, because the leather has become very, very, very expensive lately. Okay? And this big behemoth here is the pattern for my Texas Walker. Okay? And this one here, some of these I drew. Basically what I did was I laid the pistol on the piece of paper, and I took a pencil and I marked the barrel line and how much room to give myself for the pistol to fit into the leather, okay, for this pattern. Now, if you'll see here, this has got, and this is all one piece. There's no separate pieces here. You cut it out in one piece of leather, okay? Now, this area here is for this strap to go be threaded through to hold the pistol in place. And as you may have seen in the other video, this piece here, the end of this piece here, I got snuff all over my tobacco, all over my fingers. I put a hole here, a slot here, and I did a triple, I think it's a triple blood knot tether on that, to where it comes down to where you can take the leather and put it through this strap and then pull the strap down on top of the pistol. Okay, all one piece of leather. All right. Yeah, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this shows you the Texas jock strap, and it's just as the name implies. You know, these will be eventually, you know, the leather wet, and these will eventually curl back behind the holster, and you put your holster through, and this area here keeps it from going down any further. It blocks it off. And so that's that. And I think this is another piece to it. But here's one thing I wanted to show you. You can get these. You might be able to find them at a bookstore, but more than likely, you're only going to be able to find something like this at places, leather making places, like Tandy Leather. Okay? It wasn't very expensive, I don't believe. But it kind of gives you, it's kind of neat. It kind of gives you a history and a how to make your holster thing on it. Okay? And here's all the different holsters that you could basically create from this. See, that right there is a shoulder harness. Your arm goes through there. And you can see the X, like I was talking about. And this piece here goes around your ribs and your belly and your back. Okay? So, you got an introduction here. Then you got a guide of taking whatever gun it is that you want, whether it's an automatic or a single shot or a single 6 or a double action 6 or whatever it is. You can even make one for a rubber band gun if you want to. But it shows you, like I said, that finger's bothering me. You can basically take your pistol and draw an outline on the paper after you've made that center line mark or that fold, because that's very important. And it shows you how to make the outline and gauge your sewing area together. And then all you do, it's like making a dress, only it's out of leather. Kinky, ain't it? Cut it out, draw it onto your leather, and start working on your holster. Shows you how to, and yeah, it shows you how to bend the leather over and make your own pattern for the belt loop. Shows you here, in this instance, it's only got a singular Mexican loop for the skirt. Alright. And you can make left hand or you can make right hand holsters. Okay. And you get to decide how you want your pistol to hang on the belt. See? Whether you're right hand or left hand. And it shows you the pattern to make whatever angle you want. All right. And let's see. Here we're getting into assembling, engraving the leather, doing whatever artwork that you want to do into the leather, and how to put in your stitching, do the punching and the lacing and all that stuff. And it's an easy to follow guide. After I made my first holster, I was really charged, man. I was like, I can't wait to start these other projects. And before I knew it, I was making holsters not only for myself, but I was making them for some of my friends. And they paid me handsomely for it, because they said it was dang good work and it would cost them a whole lot more if they went somewhere else. And these were custom. So, see, I don't have a mark. That's another thing. I don't have a mark on my holsters or on my belts. All right. Now I could put a KR on there and cure that problem, but I didn't want to. A lot of leather makers, they'll create their own stamp and stamp the leather with their maker's mark. I didn't do that on mine. And here we go. We're going through, you know, sewing the leather together and the tools to use in order to accomplish it. Different types. See, this is just a leather strip, and you make the elongated holes and you put the stitching in through that strip of leather, thin strip of leather, and you just sew it together like it shows here. So basically, it even gives you a guide on how to thread the needle. How to hand sew. Shows you the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. Just follow the instructions. I know it's hard for a man, but follow the instructions. You won't go wrong. Yeah, just a neat, informative, like this one here. Now, I didn't do this. That's called a cap, a holster cap. And as you see it seals up more or less the end of the holster. It plugs it, or they call it a holster plug. And it shows you how to sew one of those in. But it does have a small hole here for that if your holster gets filled up by riding your horse through a lake or through a deep stream or heavy rain, it'll allow the water to come out of the holster instead of keeping your pistol wet. Okay? And, here it talks about holster fillers. Yeah. It depends, how some people like installing these fillers in because it increases the thickness of that outer edge of the holster. Okay? Which makes it stronger, more durable. But if you're going to go old school, you'll just fold the two halves together, or the one piece together along its center line and sew it. Okay? And I thank you for being patient enough to listen to me yammer and hammer about this, but it is a part of my channel because I've got it up there on the description in my channel. And I had a lot of fun producing these holsters. But it's a real neat book, very educational, gives you a step-by-step guide on how to perform these tasks. Okay, see here? That's basically a Mexican loop. You've only got the one here and the holster shoved through the hole. Same with this one. Now this one is what I was talking about earlier. That is called a Texas jock strap, where that T piece is actually sewn onto the skirt flap, or it's riveted in, or Chicago screwed in, so it retains the holster in place. Okay? Yeah, it even shows you some of that. Okay? Here it's talking about excuse me, getting artsy fartsy and using certain leather engravers and certain stamps to create whatever look, carving or stamping, and you draw the pattern onto the leather and you just follow your pattern with whatever you're doing. Carving in that instance, stamping in that instance, combinations of the two, whatever it is you know floats your boat. That's the basket weave. A lot of people like that. I don't care for the basket weave. And here, towards the end of the book, you actually have holster patterns that if you wanted to, you could cut them out and make your pattern for your holster. This one here shows the artwork form and drawing with a pencil, the pattern, and doing your engraving, or in this case, you got the stippling. It's called stippling. Excuse me. Punch. That'll make that textured area. Okay. Here you got a crosshatch, kind of, you know, up here, more stippling. Or they call it, well, I don't know, what do they call that? I call it stippling. Okay? And so, you know, like I said, you can't go wrong. Just follow the instructions and you'll be all right. And there's, you know, some leaves and a vine and what have you. Some like putting acorns is real popular. Whatever pattern you want to. Now, if I neglected to say so, you only want to do the carving and the cutting out and these texture designs when the leather is wet, okay? Or it's kind of in between wet and dry. If you don't, you're going to have a problem. Or you can have a problem. Here's some more holster patterns. That's the very one I used for Don's Smith & Wesson police model. Now, I didn't do all this artsy-fartsy artwork on it. I kept it kind of bland, but I did do some engraving and some stamps, some other stamps, and then that Star of David on it because he's Jewish. Yeah, believe it or not, folks, there were Jews back in the 1800s that wore pistols. Hell, some of them might have been gunfighters or marshals or Texas Rangers or whatever. Okay, these are different types of stamps or carving. Yeah, carving instructions. Okay. Just more examples of holsters that you can do on your own. Doing different types. Now, this is showing you different stages of certain things as you're carving, because these are actually kind of like 3D. Some of the leather is sunk down below, and then some of the leather is raised higher than other areas. And you all do that by the carving, engraving, and stamping. Okay? And so, like, there's the finished product in black and white. Okay? More holsters. More patterns. See, there's the acorns. There's the Texas jockstrap holster. And there's different ways of retaining the holster. You don't have to do this. Okay, and that's how it attaches to the skirt. And then you, while wet, you flip the holster over. Your belt will go through the loop that it creates, and the holster fits down into the leather. And once that dries, it's pretty well glued in there, because leather shrinks. After you get it wet and it dries, it'll shrink. And all of it will shrink, and it'll hold it all together. That's why it's important on holsters like this and others like the Mexican loops that you basically do all of this in one step, where you wet everything and you install your pistol into the holster, okay, with saran wrap down where you want it, and you go ahead and flip it over and put it through the loops or the jock strap, and you just let it sit and dry. That's all you do, is just sit and let it dry. In this instance, they show where you can do a belt to do the same thing that this does. Okay, different ways of doing things. Here is the pattern that I used for the shoulder strap. Left hand or right hand? Now mine's right hand, so that means the pistol's up underneath my left armpit area. Okay? You know, if you watched any Doc Holliday or some of the other westerns, some of them wore a shoulder harness. Another holster here. And that's it. That's basically show and tell today. Made or printed in Taiwan. There ain't nothing sacred nowadays. I guess I never noticed that. Printed in Taiwan. Well, bless their hearts. Thank you for printing that, Taiwan. And this guy here, Al Stolman, is a very famous leather maker. Okay? You can look him up and research him for yourself. So, again, if you're into that sort of thing and you have the desire and the need to recreate your own piece of Western history, then get you this book, buy the supplies you need, and start making your own holsters and your own belts. I think you'll be overall very pleased and happy if you'll just try it. And there's nothing wrong with trying and failing. That's part of the process. Expensive as the leather is, if you make a bad cut and you can't save the piece, then yeah, you're going to have to start all over and cut you out another piece. I hope that doesn't happen to you. I haven't had it happen to me, because I used to do construction when I was way, way younger. And the rule of thumb was always measure 13 times and cut only once. And as long as you honor that, you'll pretty much have a pretty good outcome. Okay? Now this is a Pieta piece here, made in Italy. They do a great job. This coloring here is what they call case hardening, and this is the colors that it produces. I don't know if that shows up well or not, but there's blues and purples and yellows and silver and black and green, and there's all kinds of colors in that. And you need, if you want to, if you got time to waste, look up the old time method that the pioneers used to case harden the steel. Okay? I think you'll find it interesting. I mean, those guys really did a home brew, home concoction, figured it out on their own with a wonderful, creative, beautiful result. And some of that actually, if you'll read about it, they actually use deer or elk antlers and certain kinds of wood. And all that burning in combination together would give that coloration effect. And of course, the heat, what it does is harden the steel or the iron in some cases. Okay. Of course, the rest of it is blued. You know, then you got the walnut grips. So, yeah, give it a try. You never know until you try. And even then, if you'll just follow the instructions, they have plenty of YouTube channels out there that shows you literally the beginning and the end of making a holster for any type of pistol that you want. So you can do YouTube, or you can buy you the real deal book like this, the tools, the leather, the supplies. And the thing about it is, when you buy one of those big sheets of leather, you can make, I think I could make, on average, I can make like five or maybe 6 holsters out of one sheet of leather with the size that they were selling at Tandy at the time, and I forget what the exact size was. You can look it up. It's a big old sheet of leather and it's pricey. So that's basically it for today. We're an hour into this yapping and hammering and yammering and acting goofy and having dirty fingers from snuff, and it's time for my coffee. And I'll talk to y'all later. If you have any questions, feel free to like and subscribe, and even make a comment if you need to. I'll answer your questions if you ask them. And I'll talk to you later. Until then, God bless you. Have fun with life. Don't take it too seriously. And just move it on along. Bye.